Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we usually go back and look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. However, today we have a special bonus episode where we're looking at a Netflix film from 2025. It's the psychological thriller called The Woman in Cabin 10. This one is directed by Simon Stone and stars Keria Knightley, Guy Pearce, Art Malik, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Scodelario, Daniel Ings and Hannah Waddingham. I'm Jesse, I'm your host. Thank you for joining me today for this special bonus episode. This is a Netflix original film which came out over the weekend worldwide on Netflix. So if this is a film that you haven't seen yet and you're interested in checking it out, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because I will spoil the film as we go throughout this episode. And what better way to talk about the film than how it ended up on Netflix and what's the story behind it. So I guess the Woman in Cabin 10 is a very clear title. This is the first time in a long time there's no other translations around the world other than that. It is literally about who is the woman in this cabin on a cruise or on a yacht. So that's literally where we're at. And my fast flicks for this one is the idea that our fast flicks is a short little summary of what the film's all about. But this one's about an investigative journalist who joins a luxury yacht with the richest of the rich, and she tries to investigate a woman overboard, even when she is told nothing happened. So obviously we're on this yacht. This is what's going on. The tagline for this film was, "They don't want you to believe what she saw." Like, who doesn't want you to believe what? I never felt like the cast in this film were trying to make you feel this. So I'm interested. It's a pretty ordinary tagline from me. This is an adaptation of a novel from 2016 of the same name by the author Ruth Ware. So CBS initially acquired the film rights in 2017 and began developing a film with the Gotham Group with Hilary Seitz attached to write the screenplay. We then go to May of 2024, where it was announced that Netflix had acquired the rights, with Simon Stone set to direct the film, with Keria Knightley set to star. In September that year, the rest of the cast joined. Principal photography took place on the Isle of Portland in Dorset in England from September of 2024, and the filming on this yacht, this super yacht called the Savannah. Apparently this yacht cost $150 million to make, so it's a very luxury, expensive yacht. Filming did wrap on the 27th of September 2024, after also filming in Norway as well as other places across the UK. This is obviously based on a book, so there are some differences, I guess. I haven't read the book, but this is what I could see online, and this is getting into heavy spoiler territory about the film, I guess. But in the book, Laura, who is our main protagonist, who we'll talk about soon, and played by Keria Knightley, she has or experiences, she's robbed before she goes on this yacht trip. That doesn't happen in the film. And obviously this sets her nerves on edge a little bit before the travel and adds some more layers to, I guess, some anxiety, which probably would have added a bit more to this film, because the robber steals her purse, her phone, her wallet, and it throws her off work. So that would make more sense to add some more anxiety to why she's so frantic throughout this film. And obviously there's no, robbery in this movie, though there is these flashbacks, these unnerving flashbacks throughout of this woman dying. That was the source of this story that Laura was working on as well, and that, I guess, is the guilt that we see in the film. Also in the book, Laura is dating a man called Judah Lewis, or also known as Jude, who travels a lot for work as well. And this idea, or this character, is that she actually has someone else on the mainland that she can try and reach out to, and I thought that was very interesting, like an anchor almost for her. While we're talking about boats, but that's a different sort of take on the story too. Also in the book, apparently this Laura character takes antidepressants, which obviously changes that perspective a lot more as well. All these things, I'm not sure why they took them away from the character, because this would have helped understand more so why she was so over the top in what she sees and hears on the boat too. Also in the book, there's this cabin 10. This is the title. This is the cabin next to her. She's staying in cabin 8. So in the book, Laura knocks on the cabin next door to borrow some mascara, because her purse has been stolen at the start of the book, obviously. And this is where she finds this mysterious woman. Obviously, the woman was annoyed, but lends her this mascara and says, "Don't worry about returning it." This makes so much more sense than how Laura ends up in the cabin in the film, which we'll probably talk about in scenes very shortly. Also in the book, the woman pretending to be Anne is actually Bulmer's or Richard's mistress, and she actually loves him. So very interesting that they took that out of the film too. So according to the director Stone, the idea to have Richard finding a stranger to be his wife in the film came from his own recent travel experiences. He said, "This is the first time this has ever happened to me, but when I got on the plane in Hong Kong to come back, I didn't have to show my ticket or my passport because they had my face, this facial ID recognition. And he said, so they used my face to open the gate to let me in. And I was like, that's terrifying. It means that somewhere in Hong Kong, at least Cathay Pacific, they have a record of my face. And if that got hacked, then everyone else has a record of my face, he continued. They also have all sorts of other details about me, like the technology is there, where there, he says, meaning it was easy to make Richard's accomplice a random who could use AI rather than making her his lover, even though they do kiss in a moment in the film. The director also said putting images out there, putting narratives out there that can feed into the diminishment of the believability of women is not something I want to be involved with, full stop, he said. So obviously pushing that idea that he believes that Laura as a character is a strong character in this film. All right, so this did hit Netflix worldwide on the 10th of October 2025. As I've said, it was filmed around the UK as well as some moments in Norway. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? At this stage, on Rotten Tomatoes, it sits at 27% from critics. That's on 37 reviews. That is definitely rotten, not very good. The audience only a little bit higher at 34%. That's on more than 100 ratings, so very low. IMDb a little bit higher, 6 out of 10 on nearly 8,000 ratings. Letterboxd a little bit lower, 2.6 out of 5 on nearly 16,000 ratings, and has been logged by 19,000 people. And on Metacritic, our traffic light system of red, yellow, and green, the critics have it at 41 out of 100. That's on 16 reviews. So that's yellow. That's in that middle section. And the audience also has it in the middle section too. Yellow on 11 reviews. It sits at a 4.4 out of 10. So what are my early thoughts on this film? It's boring. I mean, a thriller where you want to know who done it almost, and there's no suspense or intrigue really in relation to this throughout until quite late in the film. So for me, this is a bit of a skip. I would not suggest or recommend watching this unless you just want something on in the background that you don't actually need to pay any attention to whatsoever. So let's talk about the characters. Laura, I've touched on her already. She's this investigative journalist who's traumatized by the murder of a woman who'd agreed to talk to her for a story. So she needs a bit of a break and decides to head on this cruise to do, I guess, almost some easy work. It seems like a bit of a breeze, but obviously it's not. We then have Anne. Anne is this billionaire with lots of cash. She is in the final stages of her life. She's got terminal cancer. So this whole trip on a yacht that Laura's jumping on board is to farewell her almost as she struggles with the end of cancer and sets up this foundation to put support into medical treatment and things like that. She personally invited Laura onto the boat because she respects the work that Laura does as well. And then the other side of things is Richard, who's Anne's husband. I guess you would call him the villain of the film with his little henchman. He's not happy about being written out of Anne's will for charity, so I guess he'll do what he can to ensure that he gets the cash himself and leaving his wife behind. The other characters on the boat, we've got Ben. Ben is this photojournalist, he's a photographer. He's an ex of Laura. That's introduced very early on, so there's awkward tension between them just for the sake of it. And he does admit that in the past, whenever they had this relationship, he was a dick to her, and he's apologized, but he still obviously can't quite get over this little bits of feelings he has for her. Carrie is the person that's hired by Richard to replace his wife, Anne, so he can use her with that AI technology to get all the money for himself instead of the charity. She's been conned into this by the looks of it because she has a child and wants the best for them. So he's doing whatever she is told to do to get out of this situation, I guess. The other people, we've got Dr. Robert. He's the doctor on the boat who's obviously a good friend of Richard and owes Richard something. So does whatever he says, including murder and being dodgy. We have Heidi and Thomas. They're a husband and wife. Heidi works as an artist. She's got this art gallery. Thomas has cash from business. She gets drunk. She doesn't know what's going on. They're not really needed in the film, to be honest. The same as Grace. She's this social media socialite who does help Laura at stages, but doesn't really need to be there. Same as Adam. He's this party boy who will almost root anything that walks. And we have this struggling musician, Danny, that rocks up, waste of space. And then Sigrid, the head of security of Richard's boat. Again, I'll talk about her soon, but these are just side characters to try and make it a film bigger than it needed to be, almost. All right, the director, Simon Stone. This guy we've seen before on the show. He directed the film called The Dig, which is a Netflix original film. Really enjoyed that film. So if you can find the episode on The Dig and watch that film, really thought that was a good film. That's in our back catalogue. But he's also directed the film from 2015 called The Daughter, as well as a segment of It was like an anthology film called The Turning from 2013, an Australian film adapted from a Tim Winton book of short stories. So he directed one of the segments in that as well. Let's talk about some scenes. What are some scenes that worked? What didn't work in this film for me? The thing, I think it was about the 55-minute mark of the film. It kind of got interesting. That's where I sort of got engaged. And that's about it. Everything else is sort of laughable, which is a bit disappointing. There's the start of the film, Laura sort of checks into her cabin and she finds some cigarette butts and puts them in the bin. And it's so obvious that this is a clue that it was ridiculous. It's like, oh, what are they going to mean? And then we get it blatantly told to us later on in the film what those cigarette butts mean. Laura, as I said, she just randomly goes into the cabin 10. She randomly goes in Carrie's room to avoid Ben, the photographer, because of this awkward tension between them. She goes in, she's like, oh, I'm sorry, and then just walks out. It was so bad, so bad. Laura goes to see Anne at some stage. Anne invites her, talks to her, and tells her story and how she appreciates Laura's work. And then later on, she's invited back to see Anne. And she's like, oh, all these medications that I take it out of me. When the prior scene, when she met the real Anne, she'd stopped the meds. So it just made it so obvious where this film was going and that wasn't actually Anne sitting there. Laura, she climbs over the side of the boat at one stage to go across the balcony to the room next door. And she's just hanging over the water and she loses a shoe just to create this tension. It was laughable. This Danny character, he does this duet that he apparently did with Anne at some stage, this musician, just random. There's a stage where Laura gets knocked over the head and into the pool where she struggles underwater, and then the cover of the pool goes over the top of her while she's in the water, and then she's under the water below deck where everyone can see her. It was just so anticlimactic. It just didn't feel any tension at all. And then after she gets taken out of the water and all of her clothes are taken off her, they've been taken to the laundry room for her. So, of course, all the stuff in her pockets are gone. Like, you know, just... oh, my God, really bad. Laura then gets this knock on her door. She's in her room recovering. She gets this knock on the door, and the person who knocks on the door starts running. So Laura starts chasing. This is obviously Anne's replacement, Carrie. But the idea that Laura would just get up and chase this random, especially in the prior scenes where she said, someone's trying to kill me. Like, why would she get up and follow? It was just really bad. There's a scene where Laura jumps from the boat to escape towards the end, and she happens to be able to swim and get to land, and right near the land, there's this little house that she could break into, make herself a fire, and dry herself off. I was just like, how convenient. And then she has these visions of the good times that she had with Ben, because now Ben's dead. So it didn't feel like she actually needed to recollect those moments. Then Laura goes to this gala at the end. She's probably the most wanted person on that boat from all the people that are trying to get rid of her. She goes to this gala and is able to just take a seat when Richard and his crew wanted her dead. It was just unbelievable. Then she takes the mic and starts talking. So, I don't know, it just felt so convenient. And the Sigrid security chick that I mentioned in the characters before, she just happens to believe Laura in the end, and then walks off, finds a cupboard with this huge gun to shoot at Richard. I just thought that was quite funny. And again, the end, the final scene, it's so lame that Laura's back in the office after this, and this chick comes up to her to say, you're the inspiration as to why I wanted to intern at this news publishing house. I don't know. That's where it left me. So what's the film trying to say? What are some themes, some ideas? Not much, really. I had to sort of reach to find some stuff, but the idea of investigative journalism, I guess, like the idea of people putting their lives on the line to tell a story and giving a voice to the voiceless. I think that line is said a couple of times in the film too. There's also that idea of the fear of not being believed, and apparently that's what the author said the book was about. So I guess that ties in with that sort of story I told about Simon Stone, the director, before, and not wanting to put a negative spin on a female story as well. The entitlement of rich people, it's seen, but it's nowhere near covered like it is in films like Glass Onion or what was the Triangle of Sadness. It's done a lot better in those films as well. And obviously the idea of comprehending suffering without experiencing it yourself too. We see this through Anne and I guess a little bit too through Laura and the trauma that she's had from her previous case or article, news story that she was working on. Takeaway from me. This Danny, musician character, he literally rocks up late to this yacht on a little boat, and he spoke like a poor man's Jack Sparrow. It was like he was impersonating Keith Richards or Johnny Depp in that character, and then they call him Danny Tyler. So it was like a mix between like Steve Tyler of Aerosmith as well. It was just a really poor representation and a character that wasn't needed in the film at all. Yeah. All right, some questions, some pondering, some thoughts. Like, does the whole film, does it just not work as an audience because you believe that Laura is telling the truth the whole time? Like, there was no part of me that ever questioned that what Laura was saying or hearing wasn't actually happening. And that's pretty much the case the whole film, whole way throughout the film too. Everything that happened to her, everything that she saw was real. So, and I'm not sure if that's a little bit of a fault of the filmmakers at times, is that you need to add a little bit of tension and intrigue to think that maybe she is in danger, or maybe she's not actually seeing the truth. And I guess you add that in through that backstory of her in the book. She's got the robbery that occurs, but also in this film, she's seen the murder of someone in a case she was working on. So flashback to that more. Yes, they have random flashbacks throughout, but they don't add that to the tension that she's feeling in the film. And at the end of the film too, Carrie is obviously checked in with Laura to make sure she's okay, and she's with her daughter and she's happy, and she says to Laura, come and visit me and my daughter. I just got big sequel vibes. I haven't read the book, but I'm wondering if that's the case, if that's where the next story in the series goes, is that she goes and travels to Norway and there's something else that happens with Carrie and her daughter. I just have weird vibes. That's how it felt. It didn't feel like it was needed in the narrative the way it was done. Anyway, I'm ready to wrap this one up. We give the film a rating out of 5 on this show. For me, unfortunately, there's not enough character to care about, or even a character to care about, and you should be caring about a lot, but you don't really. And the same with Laura. Keira Knightley's fine. She does a fine job with what she's given, but you just don't care about her. And I guess all your efforts in this film should be honouring Anne's legacy and supporting Laura, but I just didn't get those feels. It just sort of meanders through. So 2 out of 5 for me. Not a very good rating. We are on socials. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have X, formerly known as Twitter. The question for this episode I wanted to ask was, Guy Pearce, I didn't mention Guy Pearce. He's the villain type character in this. I feel like he's above this. Do you think so too? I feel like he wasn't given anything in this. If you're going to make him the villain, you got to give him something to perform with, or maybe Guy Pearce isn't as good as I think he is. And maybe the same for Keira Knightley. She does what she can with this piece, but Guy Pearce, Keira Knightley, you probably expect more. Why? Why are my expectations so high? Let me know if you had similar thoughts. Other than that, we are back on Monday with our regular episode. We've got 450 plus episodes covering Netflix original films. So if there's a Netflix film you've seen, we've probably done an episode. Have a search, have a look, have a listen. As always, appreciate you spending some time, and we'll see you next week.